good evening. It's a great privilege to be here this evening. Thank you for the warm welcome to Malta. Distinguished guests, the subject is holism. And as I survey holism, I propose to introduce a new metaphysics. I define this as a systematic, panoramic philosophy presented in traditional philosophical terms. We shall see. I turn to page 11 in the notes, if you've received notes this evening. Chapter 1, Equations. Let's begin with an equation, x equals y plus z, or z as they say in the United States. Equations are made up of various elements, among them expressions, terms, variables, constants, and so on. We are all well educated in maths, or math as they say in the USA, so that we understand such things well. The terms here are x, y, and z. These are all variables in this case. Equals is a relation, and plus is an operator. We may define the variables too. And in this lecture, I assume that we have defined all variables such as x, y, and z. We find equations in all kinds of places. Often we find them in scientific theories and laws. For example, Newton's second law of motion, F equals ma, or we may take Einstein's well-known equation, E equals mc squared. By and large, we apply equations to things in the real world, and in the real world, we first identify units of quantity. This begins with quantification, which maps our human sense observations into units of quantity. Now, let's do this again. X. But wait a moment. Let's take the whole of everything and consider x in the context of the whole. And let's put a circle around x. Now, x must exclude everything that is not x. Once x is defined, it must rigorously and ruthlessly exclude all that is not x. In fact, the same for y and the same for z, which must exclude everything not y and not z. Otherwise, our equation does not balance. Now, this is what we find in the scientific method in particular. We must exclude unwanted influences on independent variables. This also applies to theories and laws. Again, Newton's second law of motion, F equals ma. F must exclude everything not F, and the same for m and for a. E equals mc squared, the same applies. This is the sine qua non, the without which not of science, in particular the exact sciences which in an important sense require the very opposite of openness to the totality of things. Chapter 3, Conglomerations of Equations. We can use equations to build things larger than equations. We can build models with equations. We can build systems and algorithms. These now use various equations that we cobble together. I myself do electronic design, and we never define a circuit, even the simplest circuit, with a single equation. We use a whole conglomeration of equations which do not quite fit together. Ohm's law, the power formula, the RC, time constant, and so forth. But let us notice the nature of systems, models, algorithms, and anything of that sort which are conglomerations of equations. That is that all the terms that they include, just like the simple equation, must now exclude everything that they do not include. So now we have expanded our thinking on equations to include models, systems, algorithms, and so on. I'll come back to this when speaking about big data and artificial intelligence in particular. Chapter 4. Sentences. Let's turn to something now which is quite different, yet in character much the same. Sentences, by which I mean ordinary language sentences, have something absolutely in common with equations. Consider the reality on which we base our sentences. We divide all of reality most basically into things and relations between things. These are two of the most fundamental categories of existence. And things and relations between things exist not only in reality, they lie at the core of the language that we speak. Take nouns, which are things, and verbs, which are generally speaking relations between things. In the same way, in mathematics and science, we have terms, and we have relations between terms, which makes the structure of mathematics and science very similar to the structure of ordinary language. Take a sentence. The map of Europe includes Valletta. The map of Europe is a thing. Valletta is a thing, and includes is the relation between the map of Europe and Valletta, much as we find it in science and maths. Of course, it is more complicated than this, but I show the basic parallel. Chapter 5, words. Now let's do this again. I began by writing X. Now instead of X, I write the name of this city, Valletta, and we circle Valletta. Our words, each word is a radical, ruthless, usually radical, fairly ruthless reduction of the whole, in fact, an isolation from the whole. Therefore, once we have spoken the word Valletta, or any other word that we might choose, there is nothing outside that word that comes into that word. I think that you would be able to take me to the edge of Valletta and say you are now inside Valletta, but take one step to that side, you see one step to the other side of this line, and you are outside Valletta. So it is a very rigorously defined thing, a word, whether it is a noun, a verb, an adjective, an adverb, and so on, whatever it might be. Take a word, in this case Valletta, a proper noun, put a circle around it, and there is nothing outside that word that belongs to that word. Chapter 6, Conglomerations of words. Now the theory of language. With reference to equations, we said that one has single equations and one has many equations in conglomerations of equations. Now, in much the same way, we have single sentences and we have conglomerations of sentences. Let us think again on systems, models, algorithms, and so on, which are conglomerations of equations. Now let us apply this to sentences. Once we put words together, once we combine them, once we have a conglomeration of words, whether it be a sentence, a paragraph, or a book, every word in that structure excludes everything it does not include. We strip away the whole world that lies beyond those words. The words which make up a novel, for instance, or a newspaper article, or a repair manual exclude everything else. What is the significance of this? Words do not describe the whole. Our words, simply through speaking them, exclude the whole. And therefore, no words will describe our reality in full. No words will describe our situation in full. And in many cases, no words will describe solutions to our problems in full, whether we speak of problems on a personal level or on a global scale. Chapter 7, the nameless whole. Now, what we have said, both about variables and about words, implies something, reveals something important. We said it even as we did not say it. There is a whole beyond all those things that we name and define. This whole is therefore unnameable and undefinable. Call it the nameless whole. As soon as we name things, whether we name them X or whether we name them Valletta or any one of a multitude of things, we cut off everything else. We exclude everything else from the terms and words that we use. We create a vast area which lies beyond. The nameless whole lies beyond those things which we name. It lies beyond those things which we define. The nameless whole is indescribable. It is incommunicable. Now, at this point, an important qualification. When we speak of the nameless whole, we mean something which will not be the same for each individual. That which lies beyond my terms and my words will not be the same as that which lies beyond your terms and your words. This will matter later to the application of these thoughts. Chapter 8, the history of the whole. It has been the case throughout history, from the earliest evidence of philosophy. There has been the notion that there is a whole which exists beyond words and beyond definitions. Lao Tzu, or Lao Ji, famously said, "The nameless is the beginning of the 10,000 things. The origin of things is beyond names. It is beyond definitions. And out of this nameless, the 10,000 things, uncountable things, emerge." This concept has continued into recent times and present time. Immanuel Kant wrote in the preface to his greatest work, The Critique of Pure Reason, "The unconditioned does not lie in things as we know them, but beyond the range of our cognition." Now, while Kant did not explicitly speak of the nameless whole, he did speak of the existence of a world which lies beyond things. There is a multitude of similar concepts: the boundless in Anaximander, the world whole in Hegel. Buber wrote about that which has not yet entered the world. Heidegger wrote about the clearing where entities emerge from hiddenness. Axelos wrote about the original whole. Derrida wrote about the unnameable, and there are many more besides. All suggest a nameless whole in which things originate. The philosopher Brian Cronin writes, "Data of sense, or data of sense in the USA, is undifferentiated, unquestioned, preconceptual, unnamed." Chapter 9, the finite whole. It now follows that if we should call anything a whole which is nameable, which is definable, it is not the same kind of whole as the nameless whole. It is not the whole of Lao Tzu or of Anaximander or Heidegger or any one of the many philosophers who conceived it. Curiously, the whole which we find in dictionaries tends not to be the nameless whole. Webster's dictionary states that a whole is a complete amount or sum. The Collins Dictionary states that a whole is a single thing which contains several different parts. Whichever dictionary one chooses, there is a tendency to define the whole in terms of parts. With this kind of whole, we can name the parts and define them. We can even name the whole. This whole is the environment. This whole is an engine. But such wholes are infinitely less than the nameless whole. The philosopher Kostas Axelos wrote, "The world is not a whole, but the whole." There are only two kinds of whole: the nameless whole, capitalized, and I shall call it the finite whole, uncapitalized. These wholes, in fact, complement each other. They are opposites. In an interview with Share magazine, I used the analogy of a photograph and a photonegative, where the finite whole is the photograph and the nameless whole is the photonegative. That is to put it too simply, but it gives us an idea. Chapter 10, Wholes as Illusion. There are many finite wholes. We may think, for example, of planets and houses and atoms. Now, often it happens in life that we make such finite wholes our focus. Often we erase all other things from our awareness. We focus on a tree, for instance. We focus on a motor car or a camera. And sometimes it is necessary to do so. Let us now note that at such times, each finite whole gives us the illusion of being the only whole in existence. It gives us the illusion of sharing its existence with nothing. Let us return briefly to our original thoughts about X, Y, and Z, and let us engage in a thought experiment. Let us have a flight of the imagination. Let us imagine that we here, seated here today, could fly, and we could, in spirit form, enter into the X of the equation. We fly like a genie into the X. We inhabit the X. We fill the X. And now when we fill the X, what are we? What have we become? We have become the sum total of everything that the whole equation encompasses. If X equals Y plus Z, then X includes Y and includes Z. It includes everything that matters to X. Most importantly, it recognizes nothing outside itself. And so we become, as it were, God. Chapter 11, Multiple Illusions. We may expand on this. Let us imagine not merely the single X, but X's which make up many finite wholes that fill each of our worlds. I present them here in parallel, but perhaps they are best imagined in series, one after the other. We fly like a genie, not into the single X, but into all the X's that make up our world. We are now immersed in a world where we inhabit finite wholes multiply. There are now multiple things in our lives which recognize nothing outside themselves, which in fact were designed to be that way. Communications networks, places of worship, medical devices, skyscrapers, artistic masterpieces, all were designed to be complete and perfect in themselves. From the inside, there seems to be nothing outside them. They all share their existence with nothing. And so the illusion grows. We develop the idea of a world that is constantly being filled and refilled with perfect and complete wholes. It would be very easy to confuse this with progress. Chapter 12, the danger of wholes. There is always something outside of our X's which we exclude. This presents us with great danger. When we focus on finite wholes, we switch off our awareness of other finite wholes and of the nameless whole, and we look only at very limited, radically constrained things. Our equations and the things that we build with our equations may seem complete and perfect in themselves. We therefore tend to think that they lack nothing in all the world. There may in many cases seem to be a glittering attraction to them. Missions in space, so-called miracle cures, or the latest smartphones might seem magical. This is an invitation to hubris or excessive pride. And are we not all invited to or tempted to glory in the completeness and perfection of things that seem to be complete and perfect in themselves? Yet such holes take little or no thought for the world that lies outside them, and ultimately the nameless whole. Here is the danger. That which lies beyond names and definitions we do not know, and that which we do not know we do not control. That which lies outside of our control is vast and unknown. Chapter 13. Paradoxically, even as we cut off the nameless whole from equations and sentences, we find that we are filled with a strange yen for the whole. Let us take the case of equations. We find that no equation, when we apply it to reality, is complete or self-contained. There's always something more that we could add. We can add almost infinite detail and complexity until our equations reach into the whole universe. We find too that no ordinary language is complete. Every word that we speak, no matter how carefully we define it, reaches into all the words in the world. Our definitions of words are themselves made up of words, which point to more definitions, which are made up of words. It seems like researching a subject in a library. One book leads to another, which leads to another and another, until our search reaches into the whole library. The whole is always present in the parts, witnessing to itself, and we ourselves are always drawn towards the nameless whole, rebelling, as it were, against simplism or oversimplification. We have a natural aversion to simplism. Here ends the first half. We shall look in the second half at the application of these thoughts. I thank you. I think we're all here. Chapter 14. I continue with chapter 14, core principles. We now have several core principles in hand, which are these. Everything we name or define excludes everything else. Secondly, we cannot name or define the nameless whole. Thirdly, there are only two kinds of whole, the nameless whole and finite wholes. Fourthly, finite wholes may give us the illusion of perfection and completeness. And fifthly, therefore, finite wholes carry great danger within. Now, in every case, the application of these principles looks like this. All of our finite wholes exclude the nameless whole. By excluding the nameless whole, they reveal their incompleteness and imperfection. I now take a sampling of various areas of our existence where the nameless whole matters to the life that we live each day, among them language, science, and ethics. Chapter 15, language. Traditionally, we say that we construct language. We build the things that we say and write from pieces. We do the same with various semiotic codes. We have, say, subject and predicate. Valletta, subject, is beautiful. Predicate, we can divide this up some more. We can say that Valletta is a proper noun, is a verb, and beautiful is an adjective. And so we take the various parts and we combine them according to certain rules. But imagine that we started instead with the whole which is bigger than the world, bigger than the universe. And we reduce it to Valletta. We reduce it from the whole to one small territory. Let us take is. Now we take all of time, time beyond time, time past, time future, time, and we reduce it all to is, today, present time. Lastly, we could say any number of things to describe Valletta. It is ancient, it is complex, it is peaceful, it is beautiful. Now, beautiful reduces uncountable descriptions to one. Why is this important? It reminds us that every time we use language, we reduce it from the whole and we cut off the whole. Our language excludes the whole, and therefore our language is always incomplete. It omits the nameless whole. Chapter 16, New Materialism. We may reduce a language not from the whole but from other languages, which in turn we reduce from the whole. This is of special relevance to the scientific worldview. Often we switch off our awareness of everything except that which is material, which is to say we focus on material objects. This is partly through the dominance of the scientific method, which has a special interest in matter. The philosopher Simon Blackburn called this the selection of particular facts as the essential ones. We choose some facts and we discard others. We choose material facts, but we discard psychological facts, historical facts, legal facts, and so on. Suppose that we build a bench. This is a finite whole. It is a material whole, which we build according to simple scientific and mathematical principles. Yet many aspects of the bench are forced upon it by the size of human beings, by their tendency to rest, the type of climate the bench will endure, the type of ground on which it stands, the vista which surrounds it, and so much more. All this modifies the science and the maths. The physics of our bench are both shaped by and dominated by anthropology, climatology, earth science, topography, and many other things, which is to say, other languages. Here also lies a great danger. What seems to be a thoroughly scientific world may be dominated by languages immaterial, biological, and social, which we hardly notice at all. And beyond them lies the nameless whole. One may sometimes call this new materialism. The definition of new materialism is still unsettled today. Chapter 17, Physical Science. Science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of our world. Like language, science is a reduction from the vast nameless whole to a finite whole. This simple fact tells us that when we use science, we cut off the nameless whole. The philosophers Wilhelm Kammler and Paul Lorenzen wrote, "Physics investigates processes by progressively screening things out. That is the way that science progresses. It is the scientific method. In the process of reduction from the whole, science screens out more and more. Not only does it screen it out, it ultimately turns a blind eye to it. And every time, every occasion that we apply the science to the world, we repeat our screening out. Oceans are polluted, glaciers retreat, bees are poisoned, toads go blind, people suffocate. In fact, thousands, if not millions of things go wrong besides, without being represented in our thinking. we may without doubt ascribe fantastic achievements to science. This is the case especially when we see science from the inside, as if we were inhabiting the X. But in the context of the nameless whole, that which we exclude from science is immense and dangerous. Chapter 18, Big Data, or data, as they say in the USA. Science within our own generation has quietly entered a major new phase. We had Newtonian physics, Einsteinian physics, quantum mechanics, and now big data, which is extremely large data sets which we analyze computationally. This includes artificial intelligence, which we train with big data. Now, the goal of our data processing is mostly to optimize. It is to make things fit. The more data we have and the more processing power, the more perfectly we can tailor any number of things and processes to our needs and desires. Insurances, travel routes, medicines, and so on. Every second today, the algorithms make unthinkably many calculations. These algorithms, on the one hand, span the globe, and on the other hand, they scour the devices in our own hands. Pedro Domingos, a professor of computer science and engineering, writes, "It is the scientific method on steroids." But now the devastating problem. Our computations, our algorithms, are interested only in those things that the algorithms include. They focus on X. Everything else which belongs to the nameless whole, they cut off. It is excluded from our thinking and from the thinking of our machines. Chapter 19, Nature. We damage the natural environment, we said, because we screen things out. We cut off nature through our X's, or finite holes, which we make our focus. The pioneer of philosophy cafes, Marc Sortet, wrote, "Scientific advances create the illusion that men can become masters and owners of nature. In reality, this is far from true. On the other hand, we do devote some attention to nature, yet on the one hand, we devote some attention to nature, yet on the other hand, we continue to focus on X's which exclude nature and undermine our best efforts. In this regard, both normal science and big data are major offenders. Our science neglects and ignores the world, and therefore it overlooks nature, which lies outside of systems, models, and algorithms. Further, nature itself is an open system. In a sense, nature is not an X, which we can control. It lies beyond all finite holes. No analysis can fully understand nature, and therefore fully do justice to it. I see only two ways to remedy nature's decline. We may cease to do science on the scale that we do it now, in the sense of screening things out, or we may create enough space for nature not to be affected by our scientific pursuits. There must be space for nature to be nature. Chapter 20, Ethics. Many philosophies exclude ethics, yet ethics is everything that we do and everything we say. It is essential to philosophy. Contrary to the notion that ethics is simply ethics, there are many systems of ethics which exist side by side. Business ethics, environmental ethics, legal ethics, and so on. And every system of ethics is a finite whole. We may say it is an X. As such, it excludes everything not X. This means that every ethics is unaware of vast aspects of our existence which lie beyond it. It means also that ethics easily becomes myopic, which is to say short-sighted. Its focus becomes small. And because it is small, ethics tends to fix on our own selves, our own tribe, on elites, on ideologies, and many other X's. The dangers of myopia, short-sightedness, are classic. Business interests neglect the environment. Political dogma neglects human rights, or selfish ambition neglects family and friends. To put this philosophically, ethics is always corroded by myopic thinking. Therefore, true ethics is about escaping from finite holes and opening ourselves up to the world. As we open ourselves to the world, we arrange the world differently in our minds, and as soon as we think more broadly, emotion follows thought, action follows emotion, and our behavior changes inevitably. That is the theory of mental models. The goal of our behavior, therefore, is not, as it has been said, it is not happiness, it is not duty, it is not even love. It is the broadening of horizons. Chapter 21, Totalitarianism. All equations and all the sentences of ordinary language radically exclude all things outside themselves. Those things outside themselves are unnamed and undefined. Because they are unnamed and undefined, they lie beyond our control. We cannot control something of which we do not have a name or description. Now, we do not like a loss of control, and yet our whole existence is characterized by insecurity and vulnerability. In the end, we lose our very lives. In order to conquer the world in which we live, to have complete mastery over it, we would need boundless control. We would need control over all eventualities. This is something that totalitarianism does not understand. The philosopher Epictetus wrote, in paraphrase, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within your control and some things are not." Where we strive impossibly to reach an unreachable mastery, unintended consequences disrupt our ambitions. We seek more control. Again, our ambitions are disrupted. We seek yet more control. As a result, we develop totalizing tendencies, and totalizing tendencies always have to do with damaged lives and disasters. Chapter 22, Education. When we spoke about ethics, we said that the goal of all of our behavior is the broadening of horizons. And the broadening of horizons has much to do with education. The danger of education, too, is that it may become myopic. What is education? The X, we said, strips off every not X. This means that the very creation of knowledge cuts off vast areas of reality. We define the X and exclude the rest. Paradoxically, education may become the enemy of education, as it focuses on subjects which cut off the rest. Albert Einstein wrote, "The value of an education lies in the training of the mind to think something that cannot be learned from textbooks. When we cut off what lies beyond the X, we create many dangers for our world through the things that we omit. What we need, therefore, is to find the words and the concepts beyond the textbooks. This may be easier than we think. Firstly, we may open our thoughts to the thoughts of others around us. Often enough, we fail to do that. Secondly, we may pay attention to the creative arts, which think outside the box. These are very valuable to society. Thirdly, we may travel back in time to thoughts of other times. Fourthly, we may travel beyond our range to thoughts in other places. And fifthly, we may engage with reality, which often lies beyond the words which confine it and restrict it. This is a huge problem in our day, that words and images are separated from reality. Chapter 23, Causality. It is essential to make a few comments about causality, particularly as we approach the question of God. Causality has a bearing on major issues of philosophy. Is everything explained by material causes? Are we ourselves modified by material causes? How much are we modified by material causes? Does mind cause body to move? And now in our last chapters, the existence of God. Causality is very important to the existence of God, because if everything is explained by material causes, there is no room for God. Before we can think on God, we must abandon a closed universe of cause and effect. Now, causality requires that one thing causes another thing. For that to happen, we must name and define those things which are causes. But by now we know that outside of finite holes, we cannot name or define things. There is a vast realm beyond causes. The physicist Percy Bridgman wrote, the causality concept is relative to the whole background of the system which contains the causally connected event. Further, we said that every X and every word in our ordinary language reaches into the whole world, into the whole library, as it were. Therefore, we cannot point to something and say unequivocally, this is the cause. Ernst Mach wrote, there is no cause nor effect in nature, and this leaves room for God. Chapter 24. I deliberately omit from my lecture any thoughts about a personal living God. However, I shall focus briefly on traditional arguments for the existence of God. There is something very obvious concerning all the traditional arguments for the existence of God, among them ontological, cosmological, teleological, and moral. They are all based on a narrow vocabulary, and this vocabulary cuts off all it does not include. It discusses God's existence versus non-existence, yet cuts off everything that has anything more to do with God than his bare existence. He exists or he does not exist. This omits vast aspects of God, especially his possible relation to us as persons. By confining the argument to God's existence, we strip off anything that God might have to do with my life. Aristotle, Anselm, Aquinas, Kant, Plantinga, and many more all presented logical arguments for God's existence. Yet all these arguments fail to connect with the individual. They fail to show why God's existence matters to me. And no wonder then if it does not matter to me. Ultimately, when we speak of God, we need an argument that makes God relevant to our everyday lives. This does not mean that we set aside the subject of God. It means that rational argument for God's existence is incomplete. In conclusion, David Bevan said, one can bring it all back to, so what? In many ways, I've said nothing new. My philosophy is designed not to say something that overturns everything else, but it takes existing thought and seeks to lay a firmer basis for wisdom. In one way or another, we have spoken before about language, science, ethics, and God, and so much more. Yet we have thought on these things without an awareness of the nameless whole. Not only that, but this nameless whole has been shrouded in Oriental mystery, or steeped in enigmatic and poetic language that seems to have little basis in objective reality. Most importantly, because we have placed our emphasis on finite wholes, we've brought the whole world to the edge of ruin. We need to restore what the ancients knew so well, which is the nameless whole, which we have represented here with all that lies beyond the X. Above all, when we become aware of the nameless whole, it cuts all of our knowledge and experience down to size. I thank you.